you lost it again. Maybe it was the driver who cut you off and you spent the next 20 minutes replaying the whole thing, rehearsing what you should have said. Maybe it was your adult kid who dismissed something you said at dinner and you felt that old heat climb your neck before you said something you immediately regretted. Maybe it was something smaller, a comment at work, a look from a stranger, a moment of disrespect so minor that you can't even justify why it hit you so hard, but it hit you. And then came the part nobody talks about, not the anger itself, the aftermath, the shame that follows you around for hours, the quiet voice that says, "You're too old for this, you should have more control by now, what is wrong with you?" That voice might be the cruelest thing you carry, because here's what's actually happening. You've spent decades being told that anger means you're passionate, that it means you care, that real people feel things deeply and express them. And then somewhere along the way you started to notice that the people who actually seem to be winning at life, the ones with real peace, real respect, real presence, they don't seem to be burning like you are. And that gap, that space between who you thought you were and what you see in the mirror after you've blown up, that is the wound this video is about. Let's go deeper than you've gone before. Here's the part that's going to sting a little, but stay with me, because this is meant with respect, not judgment. Most people your age, 45, 50, 55, 60 and beyond, have been walking around with a deeply incorrect belief about anger. Not because they're weak, not because they're broken, but because nobody ever handed them the real truth about what anger actually is. You were probably taught one of two things. The first teaching was the suppression model. Swallow it, don't show weakness, keep it together, be professional, be calm, don't let them see you sweat. And so you stuffed it down over and over until one day something small became the last straw and you exploded in a way that confused even you, because it wasn't really about that moment. It was about every moment you had compressed and stored and refused to process. The second teaching was the release model. Let it out. Blow off steam. You have a right to your feelings. Express yourself. Don't bottle things up. Punch a pillow. Scream in the car. And maybe that gave you temporary relief, but it didn't actually make you stronger, did it? It just gave you a pressure valve. And pressure valves only exist because there's still pressure. Neither of those worked long term, and you know it. So here you are, decades in. And you're still losing your composure over things that, if you're being honest with yourself, you wish hadn't moved you that way. You're still giving power to people who don't deserve it. You're still lying awake at 2 a.m. composing arguments in your head with people who are sound asleep. That's not passion. That's not depth of character. That's not proof that you care more than other people. That is a leak in your foundation. And the Stoics, they saw this clearly, not with cruelty, with surgical precision. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ran an empire and fought wars and buried children and dealt with betrayal on a scale most of us will never know, wrote this: "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it." Read that again. The thing that made you angry was bad, but what the anger cost you, in relationships, in dignity, in mental energy, in physical health, in the respect of people you love, was almost always worse. Almost always. And here is the non-obvious frame that most people miss entirely. Because when people say anger is bad, they mean it morally. They're wagging a finger. They're implying you lack discipline or virtue. That's not what this is about. This is about strategy. This is about power. Here is the real truth that will reframe everything. Anger feels like strength because it's loud. But loudness is not power. Reaction is not power. Being moved by everything that moves against you is not power. It is the opposite of power. When you get angry, you are handing the remote control of your emotional life to someone else. You are saying, without words, that this person or this situation is more in charge of your inner world than you are. Think about that. The driver who cut you off does not know your name, does not know your children, has not earned a single second of influence over your nervous system. And yet, for 20 minutes of your finite life, you gave that person the keys. That is not strength. That is not passion. That is not depth. That is a trap, and you've been walking into it for years. Now, before we go further, and I want to go much further with you on this because we're just getting started, I want to say something directly. If you're still here, if this is landing for you, if you're nodding and maybe feeling a little uncomfortable because it's accurate, this channel exists for you. And if this kind of content speaks to you, hit that subscribe button. We are building something real here, and I want you to be part of it. Because what we do on this channel is not motivational noise, it's not hype, it's not a highlight reel. It's philosophy that has been tested by real suffering, handed down by real people who had real things to lose, translated into practical language you can actually use today. The kind of content that the 25-year-old YouTube landscape doesn't make for you, we make it for you. So come back, stay close, let's keep going. Because here's where this gets really interesting. You might be thinking, okay, so anger is a trap. I've heard some version of that before. Control your emotions, stay calm, don't react. And you might be thinking, sure, easy to say, hard to do. What am I actually supposed to do when the heat comes? What do I do with the feeling? Do I just pretend it isn't there? Do I smile and nod while someone disrespects me? Is that what the Stoics are suggesting, that I just become some kind of emotionless statue? No. That is the misunderstanding that keeps people from accessing the real power in this philosophy. The Stoics were not asking you to stop feeling, they were asking you to stop being governed. There is a profound difference between those two things. Marcus Aurelius felt anger. Seneca, who wrote more about anger than almost any philosopher in recorded history, felt anger. Epictetus, a man who was literally enslaved, who had no freedom, who had every reason to burn with rage, felt anger. They just refused to let it make their decisions. And that refusal, that specific practiced, disciplined refusal, was not weakness. It was the most demanding form of strength a human being can exercise. Because here's what nobody tells you about emotional suppression versus emotional mastery. Suppression says, don't feel it. Mastery says, feel it fully, name it clearly, and then choose what you do next. That's a completely different game, and it's a game you can learn. At 48, at 57, at 63, the brain does not stop being capable of this kind of rewiring. That is not a metaphor, that is neuroscience. The patterns you've built over decades are strong, yes, but they are not permanent, they are not you. They are habits of reaction. And habits can change. But here's the thing about habits of reaction. They don't change through willpower alone. They don't change because you decide to be better. They change because you understand, at a deep level, what the reaction is actually costing you. Not in abstract terms, in specific, real, undeniable terms. So let's get specific. Let's talk about what your anger has actually cost you, not hypothetically, in your life. In the relationships you value, in the version of yourself you want to be respected as. Because the Stoics didn't just offer a philosophy, they offered a mirror. Not a flattering one, not the kind of mirror that makes you look better than you are, the kind of mirror that shows you exactly what is happening, and then hands you the tools to do something about it. Let me tell you about a man named Thomas. Thomas was 54. He had spent 30 years building a career in construction management. He was good at his job, genuinely good. The kind of man his team respected, the kind of man clients trusted, the kind of man who could walk onto a chaotic job site and bring order to it within an hour. But Thomas had an anger problem, not the dramatic kind, not the kind that ends marriages in a single explosive night or gets you fired in one famous incident. The slow kind, the erosion kind, the kind that operates through tone, through impatience, through a slight edge in the voice that everyone around you learns to fear. His team walked on eggshells. His wife had stopped bringing him problems because she didn't want to deal with the reaction. His adult son called less, not because they'd had a big falling out. There was no single moment, just a slow drift, a son quietly calculating whether a conversation was worth the emotional risk. Thomas didn't see any of this. He thought he was a straight talker, a no-nonsense man who just said what needed to be said. He had a word for people who had a problem with that. He called them sensitive, and then one day his team was given a big contract renewal. The project director, a woman in her late 40s who had watched Thomas operate for years, passed him over and gave the lead position to someone younger, someone with fewer credentials but a different way of operating in the room. Thomas was furious. He felt the injustice of it with everything he had. In his mind, it was a betrayal. All those years, all that work, and this is what he got. He sat with that fury for 2 weeks before a friend handed him a battered paperback copy of Seneca's Letters from a Stoic. He didn't read it expecting transformation. He read it the way a frustrated man reads anything, looking for ammunition to confirm that he was right and the world was wrong. But somewhere around the third letter, something shifted. Seneca wrote about a man who wins every argument and loses every relationship. A man who is always technically correct and perpetually alone. A man whose anger feels like power to him but looks from the outside like a wound he has never bothered to treat. Thomas put the book down and sat quietly for a long time. He was not seeing his enemy in those pages. He was seeing himself. That is the mirror the Stoics hold up. And the moment you recognize your own face in it, that is not a moment of shame. That is the beginning of something. Seneca wrote something that I want you to sit with for a moment. He said, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." 5 words, deceptively simple, practically revolutionary, not suppression, not the false performance of calm while you're screaming internally, not the exhausting pretense that nothing affects you, just delay. Create space between the trigger and the response, even a few seconds, even a breath. Because in that space, in that narrow gap between stimulus and reaction, there lives something the Stoics considered the most important human capacity of all: choice. You are not your first impulse. You are what you choose to do after it. That is not a small distinction. That is the entire game. Here is what Seneca understood about anger that most people in your life have never articulated clearly. Anger feels like strength because it comes with energy. It comes with certainty. When you are angry, you feel powerful, you feel righteous, you feel clear. The ambiguity of life disappears. You know exactly who is wrong and why. But that clarity is a chemical lie. The neurological state that anger creates in your body floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline and temporarily narrows your thinking, not sharpens it. You are not clearer when you're angry. You are more certain, which is a completely different thing. Certainty without clarity is one of the most dangerous states a human being can occupy. The Stoics knew this, not in the language of cortisol and adrenaline, but they observed the pattern in themselves and in everyone around them. They watched what happened to men who led with anger. They watched the decisions those men made, and they tracked the outcomes. The outcomes were not good. Now here is the non-obvious piece of this that most people miss entirely. Seneca did not teach that anger was bad because it hurt other people. He taught that anger was bad because of what it did to you. The person who erupts pays a price that the person being erupted at does not. Your body absorbs the damage. Your thinking degrades. Your integrity erodes. Every time you let anger govern your behavior, you are practicing a form of self-harm dressed up as self-expression. And the people around you, over time, they don't become more careful around you. They become more distant. They stop bringing you the real things, the important things, the things you actually need to know. Your anger does not make people respect you more. It makes them trust you less. And trust at 50, at 55, at 62, trust is the only currency that actually matters. So when we say anger is for the weak, we are not offering you a moral judgment. We are offering you an honest accounting of the costs, because you are smart enough to look at the evidence. You have enough lived experience to recognize the pattern. And you deserve a philosophy that speaks to you like an adult, rather than lecturing you like a child. So let's make this real. Here are 3 things you can actually do. Not as theory, not as aspiration, starting today. The first is what Seneca called the daily examination. Before you sleep tonight, not next week, tonight, sit with 3 questions. Where did I react today instead of choosing? What did that reaction actually cost me? What would I do differently if that moment came again? That's it. No journaling required if that's not your style. Just 5 minutes of honest internal accounting. This practice, done consistently, begins to change the pattern. Not because you're trying harder, because you're seeing more clearly. The second is the 10-second rule, and it is the most practical tool in the Stoic toolkit. When you feel the surge, when the trigger fires and you feel that familiar heat rise in your chest, do not respond for 10 seconds, not 10 minutes, not a retreat. 10 seconds. Breathe, say nothing, let the first wave pass. In almost every situation, what comes after that 10 seconds is fundamentally different from what would have come without it. More considered, more effective, more aligned with who you actually want to be. You will be amazed how much of your anger doesn't survive those 10 seconds once you start using them deliberately. The third is what I call the reverse question. When something angers you, instead of asking what is wrong with them, ask what this reaction is telling you about yourself, not as self-punishment, as information. Anger is almost always pointing at something, a value that feels violated, a boundary that hasn't been clearly communicated, a fear operating just below the surface. When you start treating your anger as a signal rather than a verdict, you begin to access what it is actually trying to tell you, and that information is genuinely useful. That information can lead to real change, but only if you create enough space to hear it. Thomas did these 3 things. Not perfectly, not consistently in the beginning. He backslid, he had bad weeks, but over time the pattern shifted. His son started calling more, not because Thomas asked him to, because something in the quality of their conversations had changed. Because the emotional risk calculation had changed. His son didn't know what had changed. He just knew that his father felt safe to talk to in a way he hadn't before. That is the reward, not the appearance of strength, actual connection, actual trust, actual presence in the lives of the people who matter most to you. That is what discipline over anger earns you, and that is worth the work. And here is where the whole thing flips. Because most people, most men especially, but women too, have been operating under a belief they never examined. The belief that anger is power, that when you raise your voice, when you hold the room with your heat, when people around you tread carefully, that is you being strong. But watch what actually happens. The people around you go quiet. They nod, they agree, they leave the room, and then they talk to each other, not you. They make decisions without you. They stop bringing you the real things, the honest conversations, the vulnerable moments, the problems that actually need your wisdom. They give you the performance of agreement, and they keep their real lives somewhere you can't reach. That is not power. That is isolation wearing the costume of authority. The Stoics understood something that modern psychology has since confirmed. The person who cannot regulate their own emotional state cannot truly lead anything. Not a company, not a family, not themselves. Because real authority is not about who can escalate the fastest. It is about who can remain clear when everything around them is turbulent. Think about the people in your life who you have genuinely trusted, the ones you went to when things were serious. Were they the loudest people in the room? Or were they the ones who stayed level, who thought before they spoke, who made you feel like your situation would actually be heard and not just reacted to? You already know the answer. The belief shift is this: stillness is not weakness. Stillness is the advanced skill. Losing your temper is easy. Any person, any animal, any child can do it. Holding yourself together when everything in you wants to erupt, that is something else entirely. That is what Marcus Aurelius was practicing every morning before he faced an empire. That is what Epictetus was teaching people who had every reason in the world to be furious. And that is what you are capable of too. Let me tell you about Cato the Younger. If you know Roman history, you know that Cato lived during one of the most politically chaotic and personally threatening periods imaginable. Julius Caesar was consolidating power. The Republic was crumbling. People who opposed Caesar had reason to fear for their lives. Cato opposed Caesar at every turn, publicly, persistently, without apology, and Caesar tried everything to provoke him. public humiliation, political defeats, personal attacks. Caesar was a master of the emotional ambush, of getting under people's skin and watching them self-destruct. Cato refused to play, not because he was indifferent, not because he didn't feel it. He felt all of it. He cared deeply about Rome, about the Republic, about what was being lost. But he understood something critical. The moment he lost his composure in public, the moment he became the ranting, raving opposition rather than the principled one, Caesar won. Not on argument, on optics, on emotional credibility. So Cato stayed steady. He made his case with logic. He spoke with the weight of someone who had nothing to prove and everything to protect. He became, in the eyes of Romans who were watching, the only man in the room who seemed to be operating from somewhere real. He didn't survive the fall of the Republic, but his legacy did. 2,000 years later, we still know his name, we still study his discipline, we still hold him as an example of what it looks like to remain yourself under the most extreme pressure imaginable. That is what composure earns you, not safety, not victory in every battle, but integrity that outlasts the noise. So what is the actual principle underneath all of this? The Stoics called it self-command, and they were specific about what it meant. It did not mean suppressing emotion. It did not mean pretending everything was fine or becoming some emotionless statue. It meant that your actions, your words, your decisions, your behavior were governed by reason and values rather than by whatever emotional wave happened to be cresting in the moment. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this constantly. He knew his own temper. He knew the pull of impatience and frustration. He wrote notes to himself in what we now call meditations, private reminders, almost like morning prayers, about the importance of governing himself before presuming to govern anything else. And the core of his teaching was this: you do not control what happens to you. You do not control other people, circumstances, loss, disappointment, or injustice, but you control your response. And your response is not a small thing. Your response is, in every meaningful sense, who you are. The anger itself is not the enemy. Anger has information in it, as I said earlier, but unexamined, unregulated anger is a fire you're lighting in your own house and then wondering why everything keeps burning down. Self-command is the practice of becoming someone whose response you can be proud of. Not perfect, not robotic, but deliberate. And over time, that deliberateness becomes your reputation. It becomes the reason people trust you with the real things. It becomes what your children describe when they talk about who you were to them. That is not a small return on investment. So here is what you actually do. Starting today, the first thing is to name the trigger before it names you. This week, take 10 minutes, just 10, and write down the 2 or 3 things that reliably set you off. The driver, the dismissive comment, the feeling of being ignored or disrespected or talked down to. Name them specifically, because what you can name, you can prepare for. And when that trigger fires, your nervous system no longer gets to be the only voice in the room. The second thing is to build your 10-second practice into one specific situation this week. Not every situation. 1. Choose the context where you are most likely to react badly and make a commitment to yourself that in that context you will pause for 10 full seconds before responding. That is the entire practice. 10 seconds, one context. Watch what changes. The third thing is to do the reverse question once this week when you feel genuine anger rising. Not as a way to dismiss your feelings, but as a genuine inquiry. Ask yourself, what is this anger actually protecting? What value does it think is under threat? What am I actually afraid of losing here? You do not have to act on the answer immediately, just sit with it. The awareness alone begins to change the relationship. These are not dramatic steps. They do not require a retreat or a therapist or a complete personality overhaul. They require 5 minutes of honest writing, 1 deliberate pause, and 1 honest question. That is the small effort. But over months, over years, those small efforts compound into something your future self will thank you for. Marcus Aurelius wrote this: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Not in the noise, not in the heat, not in the performance of rage that makes everyone around you smaller and further away. In the quiet, in the pause, in the discipline of becoming someone whose response is worthy of the life you are still building. The anger will come. That is human. But you are not just the anger. You are what you do with it. Endure, adapt, overcome.